Hey friends, and welcome to day 2 of the Beginner Piano Challenge. So yesterday we went to the keyboard and we basically just tried to figure out our geography, as my old piano teacher liked to call it. Figuring out where the letters are on the keyboard and practicing an exercise that I gave you yesterday, just moving through different letters on the keys. So today we're going to get into the realm of notation. Now, I'm not going to teach you how to read music in this video. I've already done how to read sheet music tutorials on this channel. It's one of the earliest videos I've ever done. What I am going to do today is show you what you just played yesterday on the, across the keyboard, what it would look like on actual sheet music. And what I want you to do today is to print off that sheet music or put it on your iPad and use that as your reference point as you play through it again today. It's just to get you a little bit immersed in reading sheet music, to give you a feel for it without necessarily actually learning the ropes of sheet music reading yet. That's something that can come later. This is more a little bit of an immersion thing. So let's get started. Before you begin today's lesson, do be sure to go back and make sure you've taken a look at day 1. Otherwise, this might not make a whole lot of sense. So what we're going to be looking at today are the foundations of reading sheet music. And I'm going to handle this a little bit differently than I normally do perhaps on this channel, because I really have become a huge fan of just diving into the material, just exposing yourself to sheet music right off the bat before learning the basics. It's kind of like looking at books and looking at the patterns of words before you really learn how to sound out each individual letter. So what I have here is the actual sheet music version of the piece of music that we were working on yesterday. So yesterday we sat down at the piano and played by rote. And we'll go back and take a look at that again in a moment. But we were just, by rote just means by ear. I gave you a sheet of music where you could see the letters on the page to practice your keyboard geography. Now, this is going to be a continuation of your practicing of keyboard geography, because what you have here are the same notes that you've been playing, except now they're written on a music staff. You can follow this even if you have never used a music staff before, even if you've never read notes before. So what I've given you on each line is the starting letter. So this is very similar to how I wrote it yesterday with just the blank page and the letter names written in. But I gave you the first letter to start off. So first thing to note, if you hold this sheet up right next to the sheet from yesterday, everything is going to match up. So you can figure this out. But what I want you to start noticing before you even get really hyper specific on reading the notes themselves are patterns. So say, for example, you remember from yesterday's sheet that we're doing patterns of C, D, C, D, C, D, and then we finish with G. So what you'll notice in this pattern is you can kind of see how they go up the music staff. So you can visually see the notes start lower on the staff, and then as the pattern continues, it gets higher and higher up the staff. That's consistent with how it looks on the keyboard as well. Where you're starting low, you're moving your hands up. And then what you'll notice on a even more micro level is the distance between two notes. So between the C and the D, you can see it's just moving up a tiny, tiny bit, just a little step, which is also represented nicely in the way that you're playing the piano. So you have a C and a D down here, and then, okay, here's a different C and a D. Oh, okay, here's a different C and D. Now, without even thinking about memorizing these notes or anything, what you're really just trying to do is start to get a feel for how sheet music is notated. And then after you kind of have a feel for it, then you can get more specific into figuring out what each individual note is. So what I want you to do is I want you to look through each line, compare it to your original sheet, and just go through, okay, so this is where an A sits. And when we play the second pattern, going from the C's and the D's to the A's and the B's, it's a little lower. So you'll notice that on the staff too. The C is starting on the second space, and then the A is starting on the first space. And then what you'll notice is the pattern goes even lower to the F, which is pretty much not even a space. It's even below the staff. And then what we do after F is we finish the pattern with a G, which is a little bit higher. So you can kind of see this progression. I want you to just scan through this and look for all of these patterns. And if you want, you can do the visual links from notes the way we had written them on the sheet from yesterday, just to remember to link, okay, these are your left-hand notes, these are your right-hand notes, and so on, just to give yourself a little bit of a visual cue. And I would find that helpful as well. So print this off, scan through it, and then as a final step, and what we're going to do right now is take this to the piano, put away yesterday's sheet, and see if you can sort of remember what you were playing yesterday, but also follow along with this sheet instead of just the individual letters. Hopefully from practicing it yesterday, you should have enough of a memory of what you did yesterday that you shouldn't need to read music. But what you can do is get used to the idea of the notes on the paper being a guide. So you already know the notes, but by looking at the sheet music while you play, you'll start to get a feel for the action of reading sheet music, which is a really good way to experience immersion. So let's hop to the keyboard and try this out. I'm going to play through the piece again, just like yesterday, but this time I have the sheet music on the screen for you to follow along. And then I want you to print off the sheet, put it up in front of you, and then give it a try yourself. All right, here we go. All right, guys, that's your assignment for today. I'll be back again tomorrow and we will move on to day 3.